How you guys doing today?
Good.
All right. My name is Reid Refutation. I'm going to be refuting the claim that Andre made that segregated proms caused harm in the year 2013. He supports this claim with three secondary claims. Segregation in the South harms the outlook of the whole country. Segregation at the high school, Wilcox County High School, is not tolerated by everyone, and segregation brings us back to the harmful history that we overcame. So, his first secondary claim, segregation in the South harms the outlook of the whole country, he kind of supports this with 3 points. He says, Wilcox County High School in Georgia has segregated proms. This is true. This year, though, the 4 students weren't happy with the whole segregated prom thing because they were a couple black kids, a couple white kids. They were all friends. They wanted to go to prom together, so they actually got an integrated prom going, and they funded some money, and they had an integrated prom at Wilcox County High School. He also says that the high school maintains many unwritten laws of the segregation era, and the enforcement of this segregation is prominent in the community. These things are true, but it's irrelevant. None of this information explains how that segregation in the South harms the outlook of the whole country. His second claim is that segregation at the high school is not tolerated by everyone. There was only 4 students at the high school that spoke out against segregated proms and that complained that they couldn't go to prom with their friends. So what they did, like I already said, was had their own integrated proms. So once again, I don't see a sufficient amount of evidence that proves that segregated proms cause harm to anyone, other than not being able to go to prom together. It's not really a big deal. Thirdly, segregation. He says that segregation brings us back to the harmful history that we overcame. He talks about Plessy versus Ferguson, which is how separate but equal is constitutional. He talks about Brown versus Board of Education, which says separate but equal is unconstitutional, like 65 years later. And he talks about the Ku Klux Klan. It's a really nice history lesson, but once again, that's really irrelevant. It has nothing to do with how segregated proms caused harm to anything. So, in conclusion, the segregation, it occurred at Wilcox County High School in a small county in Georgia. I think they're done with it because they had their first integrated prom. They said that they're probably going to have another one next year. I'm sure this is the only, or as far as my research showed, that this is the only school that still does this, and it's kind of just like an outlier. It doesn't represent the United States. It doesn't harm the outlook of the whole country. It doesn't cause really any harm. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, the structural stuff is all fine. It's easy to follow. The argument on that being harmful and hurting the whole country, the truth of the matter is that the argument that you make at the very end, I think, needs to be the argument that you make at the beginning, and that this is an outlier example. This is not something that is typical or representative either of communities in the South or of the country. Is it an unusual circumstance? Yes, it is, but that's all it represents. In other words, what you're saying, what you should be saying here is that the advocate is trying to generalize from an unrepresentative case that is not typical. And in fact, it would be easy to demonstrate that there are thousands of proms that don't have any such prohibitions or anything like that. I do think that you neglect to mention one other thing, and that is that all of the proms have nothing to do with the school. It's not official policy on any of those kinds of things. The school doesn't sponsor the prom. These segregated proms have been sponsored by parents and families, so they are held someplace else. The school is not affiliated with them. And I think that there's a good argument to be made here that says, at best, it reflects the prejudices of these particular families. Is it a surprise that there are some people that still have these feelings? No. But is that typical? Then come back to the argument about it being an outlier. I think you've got the right idea there. I just think that your emphasis on it comes at the end instead at the beginning, where it would make a little bit more sense. The second argument, I think, is a pretty straightforward answer to this. You know what? The kids there created their own prom. That's in the story that the advocate talks about, and in essence, if this segregated prom thing has this negative effect, why does it not have the negative effect on these 4 kids who want to have their own prom where it's integrated? And in fact, if there was an integrated prom this year and lots of the kids went to it, that seems to suggest that the segregated prom is not having the effect that the advocate's talking about, that's actually having a minimal effect at best. And I thought that you did a pretty good job on that. I did like the argument where you basically said, look, the history lesson is interesting, but it doesn't really tell us anything about what's going on here and whether or not we can draw any conclusion from this particular experience. That it's an unusual experience, that it's interesting to look at, but making an inference from it is problematic. That's the basic argument that you are making. All right, thank you.